Just want to say welcome. This is our Wednesday Bible study. And just give me a quick second, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We have a special guest, and I want to make sure I get my brother on here real quick. Just 1 second. I'm doing this on the fly, so this one is going to be Interesting. Hold on 1 second here. All right. Let's see here. 1 second, everybody. The power of technology. All right, let's see here. I'll make sure I get Zion in here. Get myself in here. All right, 1 second, guys. I do apologize. All right. We got PT. All right, guys. Let me just fix this here. I'm sorry, y'all. There we go. There we go. So just want to welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I just want to give a quick shout right now to my wife. She is checking in faithfully as she usually does. I want to also give a shout to Michelle Turner for tuning in. My name is Sean Thrasher. I got my brother over here, PT. And
what's up, man?
Yes. How are you today?
Doing great, fantastic.
Good, man. Good, man. Did you have a busy day at court or anything today?
Man, it's a busy day every day, man.
Gotcha.
But yeah, no, trying to advocate for justice.
Yes, sir.
It is a tiring thing, but man, it's a good thing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, able to prevail.
No. Bless you, man. You doing people don't understand as an attorney, as you said even a few weeks ago, that is still the work of a minister, right? You're administering justice in another facet. And so, no, I appreciate you, man. Pastor Dyke, what's up, my brother? Appreciate you tuning in, man. Good brother there in Atlanta. Thank you, man. And we got a special guest today. We have a very special guest. I have a good friend of mine from Texas. He's a pastor. He's an author. And I am so thankful for the work that he has recently done. He and several others, other contributors to the work that they have just done. We're going to get into discussing this important work for the church, for the Christian community, just in general. I want to introduce you to Zion McGregor. Zion, what's up, my brother?
How you doing? Glad to be with you on this evening, Sean.
No, man, I appreciate you, man. I thank you for taking the time out. I see that I know you've been extremely busy. You guys have been just on a circuit, man, just doing all sorts of interviews and things of that nature. So I appreciate you, man. I thank you for even coming in and just kind of explaining how beneficial this work that you guys have put together, how important it is to the Christian community. So, man, if you don't mind, man, just share a little bit about yourself. Share whatever you'd like to share that you think would be beneficial to the people.
Sure. Zion McGregor. I serve as a minister of apologetics at Urban Apologetics Church, Mansfield, Texas. I'm the founder of the African American Poetry Society. Has over 3,000 members. Mm-hmm. Also the founder of the Emmaus blog site, Christian blog site. We have a readership that's over 1,900. And I'm a contributor to the Urban Apologetics book, Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. That's the book. Yes, sir. That's the book that we're talking about. So several contributors to that particular book, several great men of God who are serving faithfully in the African American community, in the church, period, right? And so just thankful for the work that you guys have put together. Zion, let's not hesitate, man. Let's talk about this book. I've been reading it, man. I've read all of your section, and I've read the introduction by Pastor Eric Mason, who's also a good brother. He's the general editor. Am I correct, Zion?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And so, just so everybody knows, the title of the book is Urban Apologetics, right? Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black Dignity, right? With the gospel. Zion, can you break down just break down that title, man, and what that title actually means regarding this book.
Certainly. Let me just begin by saying thank you so much for this opportunity to be invited to share with your congregation. This is a great platform, and I'm not familiar with ECAM, but I'm familiar with it now.
Gotcha.
So I'm liking this experience.
Yes, sir.
So the title of the book, Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel, really speaks to, first we deal with urban apologetics. Urban apologetics basically is a subdivision of Christian apologetics. And it speaks to threats and issues that are unique to the African American context. And so the book was born out of it. Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel. There's a term that we use throughout the book that is Black religious identity cults. And so when we say restoring Black dignity with the gospel, what we're speaking to is, I'm getting a lot of feedback on my side.
No problem. It's all right.
So when we speak of restoring Black dignity with the gospel, one of the things we found that the Black religious identity cults had in common was that they were really focusing on, thus that acronym, they all had in common was rooted in the need for religious identity.
Gotcha.
And this would basically insinuate that Christianity or the gospel fails to dignify Black humanity. So that's the gist of what this book is all about. It's urban apologetics being used in keeping with 1 Peter chapter 3:15 to defend the faith, giving the hope, demonstrating that the gospel does indeed affirm Black dignity. And with that, we highlight various groups that are threats to that and how to respond to them.
Okay. No, that's good. And just I appreciate again you just giving us some insight there. And when we talk urban, let's get into that. Let's get into that aspect. We talking about apologetics. Apologetics is nothing more but giving an answer, right, for what it is that you actually believe in. Apologetics are done in various areas, and in this particular case, we're talking of the case of who Christ is, who God is, right? And so we give that particular answer. And the reason we have Zion, and probably the reason for this book is, let's be honest, many people deny, right, who Jesus Christ is based on a particular narrative. Am I right, PT? Most people deny Christ in the urban culture based on this narrative that is sometimes the white man's religion or what's, some of those types of things.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're denying what they believe to be the story of Christianity, but it's really a fable that was told to them by grandmama, sometimes they ain't grandmama, sometimes it's just what they were raised the white man's religion.
Yes.
Instead of seeing it as something that came from God through a Middle Eastern man.
And Zion, so based on those narratives, man, that happened in the culture, man, what's you guys are right there at the forefront. Are these some of the same narratives out there in existence right now? Is it still people's thoughts that Christianity is the white man's religion? What are some of the narratives that exist that possibly brought about this book?
Yes, so absolutely. These narratives very much are alive and well within the community, and more largely for the writing of this book. There are a lot of people, particularly millennials and Gen Zers, and there are some tail-end Gen Xers who, if they didn't before, they now begin to subscribe over the last 9 years, particularly, to this notion that Christianity is the white man's religion.
Gotcha.
And it's something that many of the Black religious identity groups hold as one of their key positions.
Gotcha. No, it's good. Man, so let me ask this, man. I know right now we have like several groups that have not popped up, but I would say they have resurfaced. And in your book, I noticed that you guys deal with a lot of folks, Pan-Africanism. I know you guys are dealing with another group that is resurging extremely strong, that of the Hebrew Israelites. Man, do you find that this book will help just who will this book actually help? Will it help the average pew sitter? And I use that term loosely, man. I'm not trying to be disrespectful with that term, but how will it help the church in general to engage these new groups, or will it cause them to even have a desire to want to engage these new groups?
So, much like the circulating letters of the first century, this book will empower and is meant to empower the church with an understanding of the threat that's out there today.
Gotcha.
Like you said, the resurgence. These types of cults in the Black community are cyclical, much like the turn of the century. Between 1909 all the way up to 1919, that decade you had a series of red summers where Black communities and Black towns, people with mobs coming in and slaughtering people.
Yes, sir.
And out of that, you saw a rise of other movements, and you saw the early introduction of the Nation of Islam. And it's not a coincidence that over the past 9 years, and I'm dating that going back to Trayvon Martin and coming forward.
Yes.
Over the past 9 years, there have been so many deaths. Not to mention everyone's day-to-day life, economic, socioeconomic realities that people are living with. And much like in the time we were in the 20s, much like in the 1950s and 60s, much like in the 70s, it is what is going on circumstantially in people's lives and what they're seeing that has driven some away from the church.
Okay.
But it also has driven these groups to bud out.
Okay.
Because these groups really emerged from the silence and impotence of the church, or the perception thereof.
Yeah. I like that. I like what you just said, man. The silence and impotence of the church. That's good. And what you're saying there is that to some degree the church itself, right, what they used to be, right, what the Black church was known for, which was cultural engagement on every level, hence the civil rights movement, and we can go backwards, right, the emancipation of from slavery. The church is the foundation. The Black church in particular is the foundation for those movements. But now, just to put it out there, Zion, do you think that the Black church is silent, more particularly in the rising of these cults? Would you say there's less cultural engagement from? I know you can't speak as a whole or paint it with a broad brush, but what do you see, man, as far as taking the temperature of the church? And PT, you jump in too, man, anytime.
Yeah, so for the most part, the church is silent. And I say this lovingly, because the pulpit is largely uninformed. We don't really realize that often, but the pew always finds out more than before the pulpit.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Whether it's because of children in the home, teenagers in the home, college kids who come home, any parent can just listen to what your children are talking about, how they're dressing, what they're following, how they're dancing. That is your window into contemporary culture.
Yes.
And so the church has been silent because the pulpit has not really been alert to it, and to the degree, and I touched on this in my chapter, pastors who are somewhat aware, they can see what's going on to a degree, but some are dismissive of it.
Okay.
It's a fad to them.
Okay.
Or they're not really sure what they're looking at.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And we take this attitude of, well, we preach the gospel, and so I'm going to keep doing that, and I don't have to address that.
Okay.
But that is counter to what Peter says, make a defense, give an account for the hope that lies within you. And so that's a big part of it. And so the church is failing that aspect of the gospel in our silence. And let me say further, to the degree, because not all churches are silent, of course. I mean, this book and the pastors that are part of it are evidence of that. But to the degree that the church is silent, it's a scathing indictment, and it illuminates the absence, the loss, or the misplaced, some misplaced aspect of the missiological purpose of the church. So those are some of the reasons I say the church is silent.
No, that's good. Michelle, let me see. Michelle, thank you. I appreciate you letting us know about that echo. Trying to get that fixed. Do apologize for the echo, folks. Just trying to see. I'm not sure where it's coming from. I'm going to work on that aspect. You know what?
I got a question for you, Zion, while we're going forward.
Go ahead, PT.
So I'm looking at, I read the chapter, and there were a few quotes that jumped out at me. You don't mind us going through some of them?
Absolutely.
Okay. But before we do that, can you distinguish urban apologetics and the gospel? I came and they say, hey, preach the gospel and everything will work out fine. But just kind of like the relationship between urban apologetics and the gospel.
Could you repeat that? I had a hard time hearing you on my side.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yeah,
am I echoing?
Yeah, but it's also a little static on my side.
Okay. What about now?
Oh, that's perfect. Whatever you did, that was perfect.
Okay. So I think he figured out the echo issue. I think that's what happened. But here's the deal. I came up, preached the gospel, and everything will work out fine. And so here you're talking about this concept of urban apologetics. How does the gospel? Because for most people, they don't see the correlation or make the correlation between how urban apologetics helps the furtherance of the gospel. Can you define urban apologetics, define the gospel, and how they marry and how they help make disciples, if you will?
Yeah, so urban apologetics is just simply a defense of the faith within the African American context to specific and unique threats and heresies within the African American community. As it relates to the gospel, which gospel proper is a confession of faith and belief in the incarnation of Jesus Christ as the Messiah, his life and his crucifixion, death, burial, resurrection. And the old school preachers that I came up under said that his ascension and that he's coming again. 1 Corinthians 15, for those who may be watching and unfamiliar, is a good chapter. For me, it's an apologetic chapter because Paul is doing apologetics in 1 Corinthians 15 when he addresses those who are saying that there is no resurrection. But nevertheless, the way these two are wed is that in apologia, in making a defense of the faith, and the way it works with the gospel is that apologetics is the immune system of the gospel. It is when the gospel is presented and someone comes back apologetic and says, I disagree, or this is not true, then apologetics are like the white blood cells within the gospel, within the Christian faith. They kick in to respond. And so the way they work together is that apologetics really at its best serves to answer the doubters and to answer critical questions of non-believers, at the same time laying out what is biblical and historical Christian orthodoxy to distinguish unorthodoxy, to distinguish it from heresy. And so they work together to really give clarity and to codify what the gospel of Jesus Christ is.
Can you give us an example of that? Like, someone a practitioner trying to work that thing out. Can you just give us an example?
In 2018, I was in Chicago attending the Courageous Conversations hosted by the Jude 3 Project. And it was said at that time by a pastor that, well, there was a couple of things that happened. One, he wanted to define what was meant by salvation. And then he had an addendum that for him, salvation included this practical ground boots element to it. Then he questioned, well, what do we mean by the gospel? Then he questioned, as you watch the video, what does he mean? What do we mean when we say truth? So everything began to be questioned. But if you asked Peter, or if you asked the Apostle Paul, what is salvation, he would have been able to articulate. Salvation is this exclusively, specifically. The gospel is this specifically, exclusively. And when we say truth, we mean this is truth. This is what I mean by codifying, So let me give a more exact and a very important example. This same pastor has been propagating this idea and pushing and advancing, teaching in his church of universalism. It's an old heresy, or I'm modernizing the term because of some other cultural events happening and how this other term is used. So that we know that we're talking about within the church, salvific inclusivity. And so his whole argument is that you can serve any God and be saved. Well, apologetics comes in, and I consider myself, I use the label internal apologist. So I think there are basically three types of apologists. There's an internal apologist, an external apologist, and then a universal apologist. Universal apologists can address everything. External apologists would be someone like William Lane Craig, or despite the circumstances, the late Ravi Zacharias. Internal apologist is someone who takes on those heretical teachings within the church. External apologists deal with any threat outside the church. Internal apologist deals with those threats within the church. And this is where this is my lane. And so when a pastor says, you can worship any God and get to heaven, Jesus Christ is not the only way to God. This is problematic because the body of Christ, the early church, did not believe that. I mean, the resurrection is the sine qua non of the Christian faith. What makes Jesus Christ different is that he got up. Yeah. Once Jesus gets up, and over 500 people see him, that takes the sting. That's really what it means when it says take the sting out of death, because now they know death is not the end. And so there's not a fear. And that's why the apostles, when they were martyred, they all rushed to death, because when you see a man that you knew was dead and he's been resurrected, that's a great persuasive case that he is who he claimed to be. So that's an example of it, though. Someone who believes, that you can worship any God and be saved, versus the Christian faith that teaches exclusivity in Jesus Christ. And let me just add this for those who are watching and may not be Christians, or Christians who are on the fence. You need to know, to be informed, Judaism subscribes to exclusivity. Islam subscribes to exclusivity. So Christianity is not some fringed, bizarre faith that alone is arguing that this is the way alone to God. The second major religion on the planet, Islam, holds to this, and Judaism holds to this as well.
Man, so there's a place in your chapter where you describe some things that are oversimplified objections to Christianity, and you name about 6 of them. Christianity has no connection to Africa. Christianity is a Greco-Roman creation. Christianity is a forgery of Kemet. Jesus Christ was a prophet, but not God. Shakespeare wrote the Bible. Christianity is the white man's religion. And then you say these are just the tip of the iceberg. Why did you pick these 6, and what's the significance?
I picked these 6 because these are some of the ones that I've heard over the years repeatedly. So I wanted to kind of cite some of the ones that I was hearing here in the Dallas, Texas area most frequently. And these are the ones that came up. So these are the ones I wanted to make sure that I was familiar with, that I just kind of referenced.
Okay. And when you say Christianity is a forgery of Kemet, what, I grew up in some of those mystery religions, having some understanding, because some of my friends, in fact, when I was in Dallas, that's when I picked up on Kemet. But can you, just for the person who may not really understand what's going on out here, what does that mean? Christianity is a forgery of Kemet.
So ancient Kemet is basically an ancient African religion, Egyptian based. In fact, Kemet is supposed to be the original name of Egypt. So out of within that faith, you have Horus, and there's basically a lot of imagery of this virgin giving birth to this what would be considered a messianic figure, and that this figure is the child of God and whatnot. But the Kemet story is drastically. Well, first of all, it's fiction because there is no evidence that Horus ever existed. Jesus left footprints. Atheists like Bart Ehrman don't deny that all written, tangible evidence that Jesus walked the earth in flesh and blood. There is no evidence that Horus did that. And then secondly, the overall story, that's the thing that they're very disingenuous about. They kind of get locked in on this virgin and this, again, messianic figure. The Egyptians wouldn't have used that. Kemet, as a faith at the time, would not have used the word messianic. It would have, the Hebrews' Messiah would have been, that language would have been beneath them. It would have seemed as inferior, but they have their own term. But it's the same in that essence. But Horus was not a redemptive figure. That's the thing. And so it's just a fictional story. One of the many cult religions of the day. But that's one of the why that claim is made.
Sean, I got some more. We can't hear you, Sean.
I'm sorry, man. Yeah, go right ahead. Keep going, man. This is good.
Okay. So, Shakespeare wrote the Bible. I've heard that before. In reference to at least in reference to the King James version of the Bible. And there seems to be a lot of talk of we can't trust the Bible because man wrote it. It's too poetic. How do we know God? How do we know God is the one who authored it? Where does this come from? And particularly with, I kind of see the contradiction in some of these mystery religions, like the Israelites or Hebrew Israelites, in that they use the actual Bible that we claim is that sometimes they claim is a white man's religion. Can you help us kind of unpack that stuff and bring some truth there and some clarity?
Yeah. So to the first part, I don't really know the original origin of the argument that Shakespeare wrote the Bible. But it's absurd in the sense that Shakespeare was born in 1564. So the math alone makes any notion that Shakespeare wrote the Bible. That's just the math alone dismisses that. You're talking about 15 centuries later, when we have, thousands upon thousands of surviving manuscripts that have been copied and whatnot down through years through the church. So that's easily debunked, and you don't really hear that much anymore. You will hear that in some of the Black religious identity cults, some of the Um, Hebrew Israelites will try to use that. You may hear some of them say that, but it's not as popular as it once was. But it is something that I've heard for the past 30 years. I mean, going back to high school, that was one of the first arguments I heard. So that's that. What was the second part of your question?
I guess I think you kind of nailed it. There seems to have been some contradiction in that, some of the mystery religions like the Black Hebrew Israelites, they believe that the King James Bible is, or some of them, is the authoritative word of God, and if you use another version of the Bible, you're out of line. So it's just funny that we've circled around to no, it's God's word. As imperfect as that thought is, they've circled back to the King James Bible being God's word.
And as our sister just said, we have over 5,800 manuscripts, right, of the New Testament. So to say that Shakespeare was the author, it is absurd. I would say this too, man. I heard this argument my first day of college. I went to a black college, and in my classes, this whole argument of us slaves coming over on the good ship Jesus, and that Christianity was the tool by which they used to enslave humans. Is that an argument that you still hear amongst people, that Christianity or the Bible, it was the tool utilized for enslavement? And if that's an argument you hear, how would you debunk that, or what would you say against that argument?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something that still comes up. D.L. Hughley is a popular voice. He likes to retreat to that a lot. The slave masters, had they all been atheists, they still would. The slave trade still would have happened. That's the first thing we need to understand. The slave trade was not a religious event. If the original colonies had all been atheists, slavery would have still happened. So it just so happened that the people who were engaged in the slave trade happened to be Christian. Because around the same time, you do have an Arab slave trade, which was older, which had already been going on the eastern end of the continent. So the religion had nothing to do. It was an economic decision. We've got a vast wilderness. We've got a country we're trying to build. We need manpower, and that was the motivation. So we have to be very honest and integrous and understand that Christianity had nothing to do with that motivation. You still hear it because it's one of those lazy and convenient expressions that has kind of, or thoughts that have just traveled down through the years. They were saying that in the late 19th century. And I'm sure there were slaves who were saying that in real time, that I can't accept this religion, and they're beating me, and they're raping our men, women, and children, and at the same time want to give us their God. So it's one of those arguments that's made when someone on the surface is trying to attempt to think what they perceive as logical and say, well, I wouldn't accept the faith of a slave master. So Christianity was the faith, and those outside try to argue it was used to keep people in slavery. But as we know, as a matter of historic fact, in the rare instances that they would allow the slave minister to learn to read, and they would give him a Bible, they gave him a tampered Bible.
An altered Bible.
They didn't add to, they took stuff out.
Exactly.
And so for me, that only gives more validity to the truth of the gospel, because everything they took out was empowering. Everything that was taken out only affirmed this, the gospel message. And so literally the gospel was bad for the authentic gospel was bad for business. So they had to take elements out the Bible to make it more useful and more suitable to their own ends.
Oh, that's good.
And so, in that extent, the Bible was weaponized.
Yes, I appreciate my sister Michelle Turner. She is on point. Thank you, Michelle. And to Michelle's credit, she's communicating about the slave Bible. And I don't know if you guys have the opportunity, man, in DC. They have a museum. It's the Museum of the Bible. Had a chance to go there last year. Me and my brother, a couple of my brothers went up there and had a chance to check it out. But they had several of those original slave Bibles, and they communicate the tampering and things of that nature. It was not an original Bible, and when we say original,
Right.
meaning a Bible that that God would have prescribed, right, to humanity. And so so yeah, man, we have those things that are present. Let me see here. I got one other person. Shout out to Minya. Thank you for tuning in, Minya. That's my sister right there. They are serving out in Portland. They are church planners out in Portland. Her and my brother Ricardo, they serve out in that area. And so thank you for tuning in today. I wanted to ask you too, PT, if you got anything, man. I didn't want to undercut you in any way, bro. But I have one question, and that is, why is it important to understand cultural context? Why is it important to understand cultural context when doing missions or evangelism? Why is that important?
Right. So it's important to know how to properly engage people with the gospel. This is something that Bonhoeffer found helpful to him when he served the United States, and he was a member of Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem while being a student at Union. Bonhoeffer observed that the African American church was actually both observing the orthodoxy of the gospel as well as the orthopraxy. And so when we talk about why it's important, Bonhoeffer, one of the things he learned it by observing within the context I was demonstrating. So when we talk about missions and evangelism, it's important to kind of understand the context we're coming in, because it could be the simplest things. If we are ignorant to the mores and traditions of any community, something that we may think is gracious or respectful could be undignifying within that cultural context. So that's one of the reasons that you want to be aware and familiar with the cultural context,
Yes, sir.
Before you share the gospel. And so, because again, like with someone who of Kemet centuries back, you would need to be aware of that before you share the gospel, because obviously there's going to be some innate initial pushback. So you want to be informed about, well, what do they already think? What do they believe? We find Paul in Acts, he's able to interact on Mars Hill and use certain secular language, but he's able, when he's talking to these men, but he's able to do so and borrow from their own language in such a way because they are religious thinkers to begin with. And this is something that Paul takes into account that makes him effective in how he shares the gospel. So that's why sharing the gospel, having a context is important when sharing the gospel.
That's good. And I think I think this begs the other question is, man, how would this book help Christians, right, of other ethnicities? Oftentimes what we see, and this is not a knock, but we've seen this
Right.
historically too. But we saw the Catholic Church go into Africa, right? And the Catholic
Right.
Church poorly went into Africa. There's a lot of problems here when we speak of the Catholic Church, but more particularly, they went into places like Africa, and what they did was take one practice, one belief system, and married it to another belief system, and allowed the two systems to exist. And we see what we see today. When we talk about syncretized religion, how will this book help Christians understand, other Christians of other ethnicities? How will it impact them in any way?
Well, first and foremost, it'll bring awareness to the rising tide of atheism and Black religious identity cults, or BRIC movements for short, within the African American community. It will inform them of the threat that is here. And hopefully, for those who are outside the African American context, outside the African diaspora, when they finish reading this book, for those who are, again, outside, but they're looking to, maybe they feel called by God, they feel led to evangelize or to do missions within the context of any African diaspora, but specifically within the African American context, this should be ground zero for being informed about the context that they're going in before they get in there, to be aware of what other groups are about. What do they believe? What is their approach? Do for that person, for those people. This book will arm them with that knowledge on these groups, and it'll also give them the book. Also, in the third section of the book, will give them some ways and strategies on how they can respond.
That's good, man. And also, Michelle just put into the chat, very, very important, how to purchase the book. Remember, the title of this book is Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel. Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel. BT, you got anything, my brother?
Man, so you've got, your chapter made me think about whether the African American church has done a good job, a bad job in guarding against the proliferation of false teachings. And I'm not sure, on a scale of 1 to 10, where we are. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think we are, Zion?
With regards to a good job of doing what?
Keeping false teachings out of the church. Because you mentioned that Urban Apologetics guard against the proliferation of false teachings within the African American experience. And so just want to know what you think the African American church has done on a scale of 1 to 10, where we are.
Yeah, well, the church has always had and will always have heresies rise within it. We see that in the New Testament. Jesus warns of false prophets. Paul warns of false prophets. Peter warns of false prophets. John warns of false prophets. So the church has always had that, and the church will always have it. But the best way to guard against that, well, I think the question was, how's the church doing? The church is not monolithic. You have churches that subscribe to a very liberal theology that is more social in interest, and ultimately it's more secular. It uses the trappings of
African American churches.
I'm sorry?
You're referring to African American churches?
Oh, absolutely. There are further north and east coast, there are African American churches that are very liberal in their notions, in their teachings. Again, they may have a building, they may have Baptist or Missionary Baptist or some other denominational name on the sign, but when you get in and you begin to listen to what is being taught, you can hear a great deal of heresy. So they may call that Christianity, but in a real sense, it bears no resemblance. But at the same time, you do have, though he's retiring, for years, you've had people like Crawford LaRich, you've had Dr. Tony Evans, you have John Jenkins in Glen Arden, Maryland. There are several pastors down through the years and that who presently across the board who are teaching a sound, biblically based gospel. You have Adrian Robertson in Hillcrest, Illinois, right outside a suburb of Chicago. You have Blake Wilson at Crossover Bible Fellowship in Houston, Texas. Of course, you have Eric Mason and Epiphany Fellowship in Philadelphia. You have Brandon Watts at Epiphany, Brooklyn. And the list goes on and on. You have Jerome Gay in Charlotte, North Carolina. So you have churches and pastors around. Church planners seem to do a better job at discipleship today. largely in part because while most church planners within the African context don't have more money, they have more freedom. There is less conflict. And so they tend to do a better job. The challenge of what I call the institutional Black church is that it is stuck in a mode of tradition that undermines its original missiological intent and purpose. If you read church history within the African American context from 1865 up until World War II, you see a very innovative and Black church. You see an explosion out of slavery of church plants. I mean, you go look at some older churches around the country. Look, something I've always done is I enjoy it, looking at the dates of when the church was started. And when you see churches post 1865 all the way up to 1927, some up to 1943, you just can kind of look at that window. It's an explosion. You have about an 80-year window, roughly, maybe 75-year window of this explosion of church planting and just a lot of innovation of church, because Black people are free for the first time in a real sense within church, and their creativity is not stifled. But by the time we get post-civil rights movement, we're really settled in to annual days, and we're really settled into Sundays when we have 500 women in red and 500 women in hats, and so we're into it. And I'm not knocking, there was a time when these were beautiful traditions, but things don't last always. And once something begins in any time to be a threat or supplant the mission of the church, that is to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ while teaching believers through the act of discipleship, anything that gets in the way of that is problematic. And this is why you see church plants over the past 20 years. Church planters are the ones who've thrived the most. And if you expand it out the past 30 years, you look at people like a Ralph Douglas West, Church Without Walls. At their height, this is a church that had over 25,000 members, a church plant. I want to be careful. I don't want to cite the wrong persons. I don't want to be an endorsement, but there are a lot of mega churches. I'm sorry.
No, we're listening.
Yeah, we're listening. You're good, brother.
Yeah. So there were a lot of churches that have just expanded, but I'm very fond and celebratory, and I really see God doing something with church plants over the past 15, 20 years, specifically within the African American context. Many of the African American churches and pastors I know that have done well during the pandemic and thrive were church planters. Again, church planting offers a freedom. You're not bogged down by mindsets that are entrenched with Egypt. If I can draw from the Old Testament, if you remember in Exodus, the generation that comes out, they murmur constantly.
That's good.
Against God, Moses and against God. And they constantly want to go back to Egypt. And finally, God gets fed up and he says, I'm gonna let y'all wander for 40 years because I've got to let everyone who remembers Egypt die off. Because I can't get my will done through you all. Not that you're stopping my will in of yourselves, but you're a hindrance. And I can't let that poison, that toxicity pass to the next generation. So God has to wait and deal with a generation that's born free. And so for that reason, it's all about perspective. I think the time that we're living in really speaks to when Jesus said that the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. This is a great time to be pastoring. This is a great time to be engaged with ministry because there's a massive harvest out there. The Black religious identity cults, atheism, all of this within our context, who have, by the United States Census since 1904, have always been ranked the number one most religious people in America. What all of this tells us is that people within our context are still hungry for the truth. They're still looking for God. They're still looking for dignity. And there is no source beyond the truth that is the gospel that best addresses that. The church has got to be more focused and intentional about getting the message back out. I said this on last night with the Bodega ladies, a wonderful team of young ladies within Christian ministry who have a YouTube page. They do great work. They bring people on like myself and as you all are doing tonight, as well as they they really minister to young ladies within the body of Christ. As I shared with them yesterday, all of this starts with the church really being clear and getting back focused on its purpose. Show me a church that has a clear vision of purpose and clearly focused, and they're not trying to say we have to have 100 ministries. Because as a pastor, my humanity and my ego, I need to say that when I'm in a circle of other preachers. Listen, if your church has an evangelism ministry, a discipleship ministry that may be broken up into men, women, children, and youth, if your church has obviously Sunday service, if you do Bible-based small groups, and if you have periods of fellowship, and that's all you have, you're checking all the boxes of the New Testament church.
Yeah, you're doing well. Let me give a shout real quick to Shawnee Miller. Thank you for checking in, and she agrees with you, man. She loves the teaching that you put.
That's Shawnee's my executive assistant on a book project we're working on at the moment.
Okay, good deal. So you got other projects in the pipeline. Let me ask you this, man, and you can speak on that if you care to. I also want to ask, and I want to drop, great. Thank you, Shawnee. I appreciate that. She dropped in the chat how to connect with the Bodega Ladies. I'm just going to throw that up here, but it is in the chat, so I do appreciate that. It's always a blessing to learn about other ministries that are taking place. So thank you for that, Shawnee. And Zion, just also, man, just real quick, you can speak to the other projects that you have going on. What do you see, man? I want us to speak to this aspect too. And we went to seminary and all these types of things, or the seminaries, are predominantly Caucasian in nature. And I believe I can speak for you, but we didn't have the opportunity to experience any texts that were written by Africans. And unless we want to speak of the Africans that we know, Augustine, Tertullian, Cyprian, what do you think about this work and it being introduced into, the seminary world? What do you think that? And we can't speak for them, but I always like to speculate, man. Do you think that this is a book where it will be recognized as a unit to be placed into this world of intelligence or intellectuals? Do you think that this is a work that will enter into the seminary space?
Absolutely. I don't have the exact number of schools, but Eric Mason did share with me maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that several seminaries have picked this book up. They're adding it both to their apologetics department for those who have that, and they're adding it to their missions department, mission studies. So this book will be in both camps in several schools. Again, I apologize, I don't have the exact number. I'll be looking to get that information in the future.
No, that's okay.
But that's definitely something that is being added. The question is, will it be added to any HBCUs and the few HBCU seminaries that we have? We haven't heard any word on that, so that's interesting in and of itself.
Gotcha.
ITC ain't reached out yet.
No, they haven't reached out yet. But some of the Dean Carter at ITC is a proponent of universalism, so this book may be offensive to his. I can't call it theology in good conscience, but I'll say it to his philosophical sensibilities.
And
well, while we on it, what is the approach? Okay, so I see this is really. I mean, I'm just gonna come out the woods. This is for our people. How do we get it to our people?
Yes. So today I went to a barbershop, and I haven't shared this with anyone, so I'm just going to share it now because I kicked it off today. But I'm doing a barbershop tour myself personally, and I purchased several copies myself, and I'm taking some copies to local African American barbershops.
Hold on, Zion. Hold on, Zion. You deserve something right here, man. You deserve a round of applause. Man, listen. I want you to continue on that, but I do think we need to speak on that because folks need to understand and we already know. I'm us as being Africans, man. We know the barbershop, and I hate to use this term, but I have to. But it is a mecca for information, right? And
Absolutely.
so, man, I think that's excellent, man. I think that's what's called. We would consider that grassroots, right? Taking it.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Inspiring too.
It is. It is, man.
But go ahead. We didn't mean, we're just excited. Go ahead,
Yep.
Brandon. We listen.
Real quick, I have some people hitting me up. They're trying to see what they can watch. Is it being shared on Facebook or on YouTube? I can't hear you, Sean.
Yeah, it's on Facebook as well as YouTube. You can go
Okay.
to the Palm Church Miami on YouTube. If you search it on YouTube, the Palm Church Miami, and it will populate, and then they can just click in and become a part.
Okay.
I'll try to put that in the chat too. One second. I'll try to make sure I do that. 1 second.
Miami.
You know what? I usually, man, my wife is usually my.
Okay, got it. I found it.
Okay. Let's see. Matter of fact, I'm gonna ask my wife to put it in the chat. She'll throw it in there, man. The YouTube link, and we'll be good to go. So, go ahead, man. Continue on the aspect of getting it to the people. I like what PT said. How do we get this out to our folks? I do think this is one way, right? Communicating on, Facebook, YouTube, things of that nature. This is a different marketplace, but what else do you see, man? As far as, is there anything we can do too to get it into seminaries? Do we need to write letters? Do we need to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I would definitely encourage persons to write letters. If you're in seminary, even if you're not in seminary, write letters and request that the book be added. If the seminary has an apologetics course or curriculum, if they have a missions, if they have an evangelism course, I would encourage that you send a letter and request that this book be added. I think it's a wonderful resource that will edify many. But again, going back to what I was saying with regards to something that I felt led to do on my own. I didn't really want to speak on it too much because I didn't know how it was going to go. So today I kicked it off for the first day, and I've got basically a 30-book barbershop tour I got mapped out that I'm going to be going in. And basically what I did, I went in today in the barbershop, and one of the barbers just bought the book outright from me.
Wow.
I shared it with the intent, though, I asked, he bought it, for himself, so it's his. But originally I'm taking him to the barbershops to leave it there and just asking that they will keep it in the barbershops, where they keep magazines and whatnot, and let people read them as they come in. The barbershop and beauty shop are arguably the two best hubs if you really want to evangelize the Black community. And I would tell any minister, you may not really be ready for ministry if you can't hold your own in the barbershop. I'm a Star Wars fan. I grew up on Star Wars. And in Star Wars, for Jedi, it used to be that you had to face a Sith to become a master.
Yes, sir.
It may not, most won't agree with this, but I would say, whether successful or failure, before ordination, it would be interesting to see if we began to incorporate and say, before you get ordained, after you've done all the study, you've got to go to a local barbershop. And you've got to make it known you're a minister. You got to make it publicly known that you confess Jesus and get a conversation going. And it's not really something we look to measure, whether you succeed or whatnot, but just go in there and make a case for the gospel. Go in there and make a case for the faith. And see how it goes, because the barbershop is not for the faint of heart. It's a training ground. It's a battleground as far as I'm concerned. But it's a fertile ground more than anything else.
I agree, and you know what? To be honest, and to just highlight what you just stated, man, the barbershop is, you want to talk about philosophical ideas and people who can argue, and people who can there is true logic that exists in the barbershop, right? Now, their statements may not be true, but they do travel down the road of validity, right? And so hence the classic argument of Christianity is the white man's religion. That's not true, but I know the route or the direction by which the wind that blew in on, right? So that's an excellent, and Zion, what you're doing, man, is something wise in the fact that you are not only just writing books on this matter, but you have just communicated and demonstrated, right, how to actually evangelize, how to do missions, right? Start where you are. Go to epicenters as Paul did and start from there, right? And too many people, man, they do not know how to do missions. I know PT has broken into his community, hence his relationship with George Floyd and just the people in Houston. Man, he's someone who is impacting his community. And so, man, I appreciate and I love hearing brothers who start right where they are. And keep going, man. I'm excited, man. You got me hyped now. You talking
I got a question, Zion. So this 30, tell us the thinking behind the 30 barbershop tour. Just curious. I think people are curious too.
So there's a term I like to use to describe myself that it was said of me by a friend years ago. And he says, Zion's are solutions. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you think in terms of solutions. And I'm really not, I'm one of those who I have a background in artistry. I can draw, I can paint. I played the trumpet growing up, the keyboard. I've directed commercials. I've done a lot of different things. I wanted to direct. My dream in life prior to ministry, I wanted to write scripts and direct movies. That's what I wanted to do. And so I just I somewhat think and see with an artistic mind. And I'm always looking for, when I see a problem, how do we solve that? And so I think out of the box, as most artists do, when it comes to ministry. And so for myself, I felt like that, man. I said, I've got to find a way. There's no point in writing this book if it doesn't really hit everyone. And I didn't want finances alone to be an obstruction. So I got 30 copies, and I'm just going, once a week, because I got to be rested and ready to go. But I'm going in, over a 30-week period and just dropping the book off.
That's good.
And just asking if they will leave it in there. And I'm going to follow this up because I want to, even though people have their technologies and whatnot, I'm going to follow this up by taking Bibles. And I'm looking for sponsors. Anyone watching that wants to sponsor, that wants to participate. And the way you participate, you can cash out me a cost of the book, or you can purchase the book, send it to me, and I will take it it'll be part of what I'm doing with the barbershops. But I want to do the same thing with Bibles. We go to hotels, and you can find to this day a Gideon Bible in hotels. That's right. This is the kind of thing for me that the church has to think about. Tony Evans, back in the day when CDs were big and cassette tapes were around, you could go to many of the Black-owned restaurants in South Dallas and around Oak Cliff and Pleasant Grove, and his ministry would have a box, and it would say, "Take one free." And there would be tapes in there. It'd all be the same tape. And these tapes with all the message on there would be an intentional evangelistic message by Tony Evans. I had never seen that before, but it was something, it blew me away. I loved it because it was kind of the way I think. And so we have to be innovative. Because we're living in a time, not like when, I'm not sure how old PT is. I'm guessing he's within our window, Sean, though. But I would think most of us, when we were growing up.
PT is a young buck.
Oh, okay.
20. He's 20.
Okay. Well, most of us, when we were growing up, we had Ebony and Jet magazines. This was our social network before the internet, because it was centralized.
Yes, sir.
Everyone whose parents or grandparents had a subscription to Ebony or Jet, You can read through that. And you kind of can figure out what's going on, learn what's going on all over the country with your favorite celebrities, movies, books, etc. And you could go to school and have a conversation with your friends. We were a reading generation in that sense, very much so. Today with the internet, there are so many different platforms that information is decentralized. And so for me, taking this book, and as I plan to expand it out, taking the Bible and just going in, being proactive, not waiting. I actually had a piece, God rest his soul, he's pitched his tent and moved upstairs, but there was a pastor that said years ago that people need to come to his church. But when you read through the Gospels over and over, you see this language. And he was going up to, and he was going about.
Yes, sir.
And he went to the town of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he's going to towns and villages all around Judea.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I must go through Samaria.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is always going, and his going is not in vain. He's going on assignment, on mission, to share the gospel and be the gospel.
Yes, sir.
And so this was just something for me. I haven't really talked about it to anyone because I didn't know how it was going to go. But it was a good experience today. But today was the first day. I've got 29 more to go.
No, that's great.
So that's something that I'm doing, and I would encourage those who are part of ministry to think out of the box, find a way, ask for sponsors. The Lord will make a way. To purchase books and to purchase Bibles. Some ministries may give you some Bibles away. You never know. I'll be meeting with a couple of pastors over the next few weeks about that. So I want to kind of build that up.
That's good.
But it doesn't seem like much, but for me, it is a way to, one, take away the opinion conversations, the uninformed conversations they have in the barbershops where a brother or sister is just talking out of their opinion. Well, I feel and or I think.
Yes.
Well, we got some real resources right here in the barbershop.
That's good.
Let's open this up and look this up.
That's good, man.
So when somebody says, well, the Bible talks about this, that, the other, really, here's the Bible, show it to them. Let's begin to, for me, take on these kind of challenges, be different, and get it out. It's not glamorous. So if you're looking for glamour, then this is probably not for you. But it is real. It is grassroots, and it's engaging because it's my way. It's one of my ways and steps to get the gospel into the hands of others while doing urban apologetics.
That's good. And just to kind of piggyback on a statement that you made about Ebony. Ebony, one of the great editors of Ebony, General Ebony's, was Lerone Bennett Jr., who was a historian, right? So you talked about facts. We can't just look at Ebony in his history as just some blanket book, but this was a book by a historian, right? And this book had actual facts contained in the document. And so, Lerone Bennett Jr. being one who wrote so many great works in history, he was trying to spread a particular message, a message of truth as it pertains to African history, right? So, now that's a great point, man, in using Ebony as an example. I want to give a quick shout to Dana Owens. Good evening to you, and thank you for checking in. I appreciate everybody who is here tonight. I want to give a quick hello to Shotty Mills. Thank you too for checking in. I appreciate Zion, and he is definitely communicating much truth in reference to the gospel message. I want to say hello to Baron Elias. Thank you for checking in, and truly appreciate your work too, sir. I love how you stated that you leave gospel tracts in various places. So that is also doing the work of the Lord Jesus Christ. So, PT, got anything, my brother?
Man, so what would be your word to, and this is my last question, what would be your word to the lay person? It says, man, look, I want to get in this fight, I might not know how, or what do I do? They may not go to these churches that you named, but they're listening, or they will hear it, either this podcast or something else that you put out. What would you say to them?
Well, two things. One, at the very core and very base, ground zero of the Christian life and journey begins with two things: building a devotional life and local congregational membership. So to that person, I would say everything starts there. You don't need to venture into anything else until you at least have some consistency of framework in your own life. Right there, everything starts there, because in all things you want to hear from the Lord. You want to have a devotional life, a prayer time. You want to be in the Bible, be in the book, be a person of the book. Two of my favorite verses in the Bible in this season of my life. One is, I'll go with this latter one first. Titus 3:14 says, "Let our people learn to devote themselves to good works, for pressing needs, so that they will not be unfruitful." Paul writes that and reminds Titus and gives it to him that it's important that, one, as Christians, we're to be a learning people. And we're also, as a result of what we've learned, we are to then devote ourselves. We are to apply what we learn in practical ways. The Bible says in Ezra 7:10 that Ezra set his heart to seek the law of the Lord and to do it, and to teach its statutes and judgments throughout all of Israel. Ezra started with himself. He sought for himself, and then he sought to teach others. And the fruit of that, once you learn and you begin to take on a Christian worldview, you begin to live it out and practice it in your life. So show me Christian parents, and I will show you Christian children. Show me a Christian husband who's loving and leading well. I will show you a wife who's beginning, if she's not already, following in a line in agreement with that. And then Paul says, that our people are to learn and devote themselves to good works, for pressing needs, so that we will not be unfruitful. That simply means we're supposed to be fruitful.
That's right.
So every layman, you say layman, every layman, as you grow in Christ, you should be committed to being fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the ladies on here tonight that joined us are from the bodega ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an example of being fruitful. There's no license, no ordination, no pageantry.
Mm-hmm.
But as they invest in themselves and their devotion, at their time to walk with God, they are now also beginning practically to impact other young ladies that encounter the bodega ladies ministry. That's just one of many ways. And I'm grateful for the pandemic, because the pandemic forced the church to think about new and innovative ways to do ministry. For those churches that struggle with it.
That's good. I want to say one thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Zion.
Go ahead.
I did want to say I love where Barron is going with his statement, the idea of getting it into prisons and detention centers. Now, that's powerful. I didn't even think of that aspect of it, but that's another element where this book can, do ministry inside, some trap walls. So that's huge, man. That is huge. So shout out to you, Barron, for thinking in that regard. Any Zion, any plans to get it into prison? I know that's a plan for you, but any inroads thus far?
Not for myself personally. I'm sure that those who are in the lane of prison ministry, who are aware of the book, will definitely use it. I think to be applied in prisons would be a very great place. I mean, to me, prison is another vineyard. It's another harvesting field. And very, very seldom, there's a small measure of ministry that engages in prison ministry. Again, it's not glamorous. No titles, not a lot of attention to it. So, but I think it would be a great place. And I'm going to pass that forward to both Dr. Mason and Zanzibar. Mm-hmm. To see what we can do to expand the reach of the book and get it into the prison system.
And I think that may be a good another great campaign, to raise money to see about purchasing in order to provide it to unfortunately prisons, right? And I say unfortunately, I say that that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, man, I truly appreciate you, man. PT, you got anything else, my brother?
Man, no, I've got 1,000 questions. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna save it to the next time.
No, I feel you, man. Zion, you got any closing words, man? Anything you'd like to communicate in regard? We want you to definitely purchase this book. If you are someone who is watching, definitely purchase. If this is you're rewatching, right? If you're not on the live, please watch. The ability to purchase is in the chat. Shawnee had put that in the chat for those who like to purchase this book. So please go out and purchase. And anything, Zion, to close out?
I want to just thank you for this platform and this opportunity. The book is doing well. I can announce the book is in its third print,
yes,
which is unprecedented. We've opened a lot of records with this book. It was the first of its kind.
Yes, sir.
There have been other urban apologetics books, don't get me wrong, at least two, sure.
Yep, at least two.
But not like this.
Not like this. I agree.
And so this is the beginning. I would ask just again if you would pray for me and my personal campaign to put both the Urban Apologetics book and a Bible in barbershops around the DFW Metroplex. I hope this is something that others, will, if not this exactly, if you will find a way to get the gospel out of the box. Find a way to be different, to do ministry in ways. Now, be prepared. Don't just go out there and do it, but because there's going to be questions, But definitely, this is something that I hope that others will take on for themselves.
Where can they say someone wants to give? Where can they give?
Again, as I was doing this privately, I didn't have everything set up. I guess I need to go ahead, since the cat's out the bag, put something in place. But right now, if anyone wants to give, they can give to my Cash App, which is obviously the $ MIGUEL 1906. So that would be the place at the moment. But I'll put together a flyer or something for it that I'll share online about what I'm trying to do, and let the chips fall where they may.
That's cool, man. I appreciate you, man. And just so people know, Zion, you've always been a very humble cat, extremely intelligent cat. When the person said that you are a solutionist, I see that, man. People don't understand. I remember when you started the whole Black Preacher. I forgot the title of it now, but I'm a member myself. But I remember when that started. It started and it grew like wow, just like a fire, man. And so you are definitely someone who thinks out of the box. You are ahead of the curve all the time. And so for you to be a part of this project, it doesn't strike me as a surprise, because this is kind of who you are. And so, man, I think that you got to give people their flowers when you can, man. But I appreciate your love for the Lord and just your dedication to not just love the people, but you love them in such a way where you're trying to enlighten them and see them saved, right? And so, man, I appreciate your work in this area, man. So before we go, I need to make sure we put up the Shawnee is on it. I truly appreciate her. I want to make sure that this is visible to everybody, so that if you want to contribute in the purchasing of these books for the purpose of getting them out into the barbershops and to prisons, things of that nature, you can currently go to Zion's Cash App, and it is there on the screen for you. And it will be greatly appreciated. As you see, work is already being done. And so please feel free to dive in. And again, if you're on the replay, this will be in the comments, so you'll be able to just look through the comments, find the Cash App. You can purchase the book as well as contribute to purchasing this book in order to distribute it to various places. So we truly appreciate that. So, all right. Anything? If we exhaust, we haven't exhausted all. As PT said, that's an impossibility, right? But
Absolutely.
man, again, we just thank you for tuning in. Truly appreciate everybody. And Michelle dropped the link again just one more time for the purchase. Thankful for everybody tuning in. Zion, you're a blessing, man. I thank you for coming on and just your willingness. Yep. And man, I look forward to having you back, just in various topics. PT and I are just trying to explore many options, and we love to have you back again, brother. So thank you again, man.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right. One second.
Yep.
For those who if you would like to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at Zion McGregor.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at Zion.McGregor and Zion McGregor on Facebook. This is the book.
Urban Apologetics.
So
Good deal. Hey, repeat your social media one more time, Zion. Repeat that one more time, brother.
Twitter, ZION, capital MCGREGOR, Zion McGregor. Instagram is the same name. It just has a dot between just Zion, ZION, dot McGregor, and Zion McGregor on Facebook.
Yes, I appreciate that, man.
I would love to connect with you. I would love to learn from you, and love to serve with you.
Yes, sir. And I concur with my brother Christopher Gordon. Well done, Zion. We truly appreciate you, man. So, all right.
For those who are watching, please like and subscribe to the Palm Church
Hey, appreciate you, man.
YouTube channel.
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate
And I know
it.
that Sean is he's too humble for it, but please like and subscribe to the Palm Church, Miami.
Oh, no, I appreciate it, man. You know what? It's more or less, and PT can tell you, Zion, man, you do these lives, it's more to a live than I ever expected. Zion, PT and I were just going through and fleshing out, man, it's like 1,000 moving parts. And so, man, I appreciate you having the forethought to advertise this for me. So I appreciate you, man. Yes, sir.
I want to give a shout out again to say thank you to Dana, to Shanti, to Michelle.
Yes.
The ladies of Bodega, they are always on point.
They on point.
I celebrate them. I'm sorry.
I need those type of Mary and Marthas in my corner, man.
Yeah, man, they are amazing. They are a key cog in the urban apologetic community and a blessing to the body of Christ.
No, it's good.
And there's no us without them. So I'm just grateful for them and just appreciate the way they serve.
No, I love their fire, man. I love their fire. Yeah, like I say, if you know some in Houston, throw them to my boy PT. And if you know some folks in Miami, love to have you. So, all right. Well, we are out, good people, and we look forward to seeing you guys again next Wednesday. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys again next week. God bless, and you guys have a great rest of your week. Peace.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.